Well, welcome back to the United States, where the country's political divide was on full display Saturday night in what you could call a tale of two Washingtons. President Trump held a campaign rally in Washington Township, Michigan, going head-to-head with the White House Correspondents' Dinner in Washington, D.C. It's the second year in a row Mr. Trump skipped the event in favor of time spent with some of his biggest supporters. The annual media dinner was hosted by comedian Michelle Wolf, whose remarks were met with laughs, gasps, and sometimes silence. Well, in usual Trump style, the president took to social media to praise his rally as a big success and slam the Correspondents' Dinner as a big, boring bust, adding that the so-called comedian really bombed. Let's bring in Larry Sabato. He is the director of the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia and joins us via Skype, Charlottesville. Good to have you with us, Larry, as always.
Thank you, Linda.
Well, President Trump, front and center amongst his base, doing what he loves, talking about his achievements, while we saw obviously in DC a comedian ripping into him, ripping into his team as well. And one thing that stood out quite a bit last night was the crowd when they began to chant when he was talking about his achievements, bringing the two careers together. Let's just take a listen to that.
That's very nice, thank you. That's very nice. No bell.
President Trump's base there calling for him to be awarded a Nobel Peace Prize. And of course, we've also heard from some Republicans like Lindsey Graham, who once called Donald Trump crazy and unfit for office, saying if there is peace on the Korean Peninsula, then this president deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. What are your thoughts?
Linda, first of all, it's completely premature. Let's wait and see what happens. The North Koreans have a long pattern stretching through the Clinton administration and George W. Bush's administration of reaching agreements and then violating them once people look elsewhere. So it's completely premature. What I thought was significant was the typically modest, humble Donald Trump posed the question to himself last night, who's responsible for all this? I am 100%. It's always him. He's the center of everything. So maybe the Nobel Committee will see fit to give him the award, or maybe they won't. But it's premature, and I don't think it's going to have any real effect on the political scene in America.
Right. Well, we'll certainly have to see how that plays out. We are at the very beginning of what no doubt will be months, if not years, of discussion on the peninsula. I want to turn your attention to D.C., where we heard the comedian at the White House Correspondents' Dinner ripping into President Trump, his team, people that were sitting just meters away from her. Let's just take a listen to what she had to say.
Of course, Trump isn't here. If you haven't noticed, he's not here. And I know I would drag him here myself, but it turns out the President of the United States is the one you're not allowed to grab. We have Sarah Huckabee Sanders. We are graced with Sarah's presence tonight. I have to say, I'm a little starstruck. I love you as Aunt Lydia on The Handmaid's Tale. Mike Pence, if you haven't seen it, you would love it. There's also, of course, Ivanka. She was supposed to be an advocate for women, but it turns out she's about as helpful to women as an empty box of tampons. She's done nothing to satisfy women. So I guess, like father, like daughter.
There you have it, the comedian attacking Ivanka Trump and also the press secretary, Sarah Sanders, Huckabee Sanders. There is always a risk that a comedian can fall flat at an event like this. Do you think she missed the mark?
Personally, I thought it was bloody awful. Yes, I know that President Trump uses vulgarities all the time. He makes fun of handicapped people. He has mistreated women, and we could go on and on. And his speech last night, Linda, was demagogic as usual, but that doesn't justify stooping to his level. I think particularly in the Trump administration, in the Trump era, when the low road is so often taken, it is critical for people to maintain the high ground. And the White House Correspondents' Dinner utterly failed to do so. And I'm not equating a comic with a president. What a president does and his sins are far more significant than what a comic says or does. But I found her presentation completely inappropriate. And you didn't you couldn't include everything, but there were just outrageous vulgarities during a time when young children might be watching. I thought the White House Correspondents Association really eliminated themselves as legitimate critics of this very disturbing administration.
So what does it do for an event like that going forward? I can't imagine the president's going to attend it next year.
Well, I'm sure he won't. He's come up with a formula. He's done it 2 years in a row where he goes out and has an event with the real people of America and leaves the press elites in their tuxedos and gowns to do what they're going to do. I've said for years, way before Trump, and many senior reporters have joined in this, the White House Correspondents Association does some great things. They raise money for scholarships for young people aspiring to be journalists. That's what they were doing last night. You know what? The dinner has outlived its usefulness. Go ahead and raise the scholarship money. There are other ways to raise scholarship money. Get rid of this awful dinner. It was bad long before Trump, and now it has gotten intolerable.
Well, I want to go back to President Trump's speech at that rally in Michigan last night. There was another standout moment when he spoke about Russian meddling in the U.S. election. Just take a listen to what he had to say.
I guarantee you, I'm tougher on Russia. Nobody ever thought. In fact, have you heard about the lawyer? For a year, a woman lawyer, she was like, oh, I know nothing, no. Now all of a sudden, she supposedly is involved with government. You know why? If she did that, because Putin and the group said, you know, this Trump is killing us. Why don't you say that you're involved with government so that we can go and make their life in the United States even more chaotic?
Larry, for a long time, Donald Trump said there is no meddling. Any sort of indication that Russia was meddling in the election is a hoax. And now we hear this change of narrative. Who's buying that?
Well, his base, they buy anything he says. You know, Lynda, I've been a teacher for 47 years, and I've learned all the variations of the excuse, my dog ate my homework. But I have to hand it to President Trump. He's come up with some new variations. I really think that the independent counsel, the special counsel, Robert Mueller, will have a lot to say about this. It's pretty clear we're not going to get the truth from President Trump, and we can only hope that the Mueller investigation is uncovering the truth.
We certainly can. All right, Larry Sabato, we'll have to leave it there for now. Always good to have you on. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lynda.
We can always follow the latest on President Trump and US politics at CNN.com. Like this, during Saturday's rally, Mr. Trump slammed the new US embassy in London as being in a lousy location. The president's comments come just ahead of his planned visit to the UK in July, his first since taking office. Well, for more on what's behind Mr. Trump's blatant dislike of the new embassy, go to CNN.com. Well, still ahead, tracking a serial rapist and murderer known as the Golden State Killer. How a DNA sample helped police crack a decades-old cold case. We'll have that when we come back.